The fluorescent lights in Memorial General Hospital's emergency department hummed their eternal indifferent song. It was in the morning, and the ER was running the way it always did during the slow hours, quiet tension broken by occasional bursts of chaos. The coffee machine in the break room gurgled. Monitors beeped their steady rhythms. And somewhere in the back hallway, Maya Chen walked toward the supply closet with her head slightly down, carrying a stack of folded towels, invisible in the way she had made herself invisible for the past 11 months. Nobody looked at Maya Chen. That was by design. In room 7, Dr. Harrison Webb was telling his usual jokes to the nurses, making them laugh on command the way he always did during the quiet shifts. He was 63, silver-haired, with the kind of authority that came from 4 decades of medicine and a recent appointment to the hospital's executive advisory board. His white coat was pressed. His voice carried. He was the kind of man who made sure everyone knew when he entered a room. Maya passed by the doorway without looking up. Chen, he called out, not quite looking at her either. The supply closet isn't where the towels go. 3rd cabinet on the left. Everyone knows that. Yes, Dr. Webb, she said, soft, brief, and she turned and walked the other direction without explanation. One of the younger nurses, Jennifer Kowalski, watched her go and then looked back at Webb. Is she always like that? It's like she's not even really here. Webb shrugged. She's adequate, quiet, keeps to herself. Some people just don't have personalities. He said it the way someone might describe the weather, factual, indifferent. Just don't rely on her for anything that matters. Jennifer nodded, filing that away. That was how things worked in the ER. Dr. Webb decided who mattered, and Maya Chen was not on that list. The double doors at the end of the hall slammed open with the sound of rubber wheels against tile, and the night changed in an instant. A gurney burst through, pushed by 2 paramedics who were sweating despite the cold air outside. The man on the gurney was massive, 6'4" at least, and broad in the way that comes from years of carrying gear and body armor. His face was gaunt beneath a thick beard, and there was blood on his desert camouflage uniform, dark and spreading from somewhere beneath the fabric on his right side. His eyes were closed, but his breathing was shallow and rapid. "Trauma alert," one of the paramedics shouted. "Gunshot wound to the abdomen, exit wound in the back, estimated time since injury 40 minutes. Patient is Marine Corps Sergeant Major. Name is Dalton Reyes." The words blurred together in the controlled chaos that followed. Webb was already moving, snapping orders. Nurses scattered to their stations. The crash cart appeared from somewhere and someone called for blood products. Maya had frozen 3 steps from the supply closet. She was looking at the gurney, at the blood at the man's face, and something was happening in her eyes that no one in that room could have explained. Her jaw tightened. Her hands curled briefly into fists at her sides. And then she was moving, not toward the supply closet, but toward room 1, the major trauma bay, where they were wheeling the Marine. "Chen, what are you doing?" Webb's voice cut across the room. "That's not your station. Get back to." "The patient is in hemorrhagic shock," Maya said. She wasn't loud, but her voice carried a quality that stopped Webb mid-sentence. "He's lost at least 2 liters. His blood pressure is dropping. He's got maybe 6 minutes before the cascading organ failure starts. And the wound track, you need to control the retroperitoneal bleeding, not just the surface wound. There's penetration into the right lobe of the liver. Standard pressure dressing won't hold." Webb stared at her. Jennifer stared at her. Every nurse in that bay stared at her. This was the quiet woman who couldn't find the supply closet. This was the paramedic who folded towels and cleaned rooms and never spoke above a whisper. And she was standing in the trauma bay giving triage orders to an attending physician with the calm authority of someone who had done this before. "Who the hell are you to tell me?" Webb started. "I'm Paramedic Chen, assigned to transport and intake support," Maya said. She was already checking the man's pupils, her fingers moving with a precision that belonged in an operating room, not a hospital hallway. "And I'm telling you that your patient has a through-and-through abdominal wound with probable hepatic involvement. He's got maybe 5 minutes. So you can stand there and argue with me, or you can save his life. Your choice." Webb's face went red. "Get out of my trauma bay. Now, I don't know what you think you're." "Dr. Webb," the voice came from behind them. A woman stood in the doorway of the trauma bay. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. And she was wearing a military uniform, full Colonel, United States Army with Medical Corps insignia. Her name tag read Call. Patriciahayes. "I've been watching for the last 90 seconds, she said. Her voice was ice and iron, and Paramedic Chen is correct. The patient is in Class 3 hemorrhagic shock with probable liver involvement. Standard pressure dressing will not hold. You need to initiate a resuscitative endovascular balloon occlusion of the aorta, and you need to do it in the next 4 minutes or he dies on your table. Webb opened his mouth. Colonel Hayes did not let him speak. You can either listen to someone who has more combat trauma experience than your entire department combined, she said, or you can explain to the Marine Corps why their sergeant major bled out in a civilian ER because your ego was more important than his life. Choose now. The room was silent. And then Maya was moving, and no one stopped her. The next 11 minutes were a masterclass in controlled chaos. Maya called out vitals in a steady voice, her hands working with the kind of efficiency that comes from muscle memory, so deep it never fades. She guided the nurses through blood transfusion protocols. She identified the bleed source with an accuracy that made the surgical team, when they arrived, swear under their breath in surprise. Webb stood against the wall, watching, his face unreadable. When the bleeding was finally controlled, when the patient was stabilized and breathing on his own, when the surgical team had taken over and the immediate crisis had passed, Colonel Hayes turned to Maya. "That was textbook," she said. "Better than textbook. How long has it been since your last combat deployment?" Maya didn't look up from the monitoring equipment she was checking. "4 years, Colonel." "And you walked into this hospital as a transport paramedic folding towels." "That's correct." Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You understand that I have questions about that. A lot of questions." "I understand," Maya said, "and I'll answer all of them. But right now, Sergeant Major Reyes is still critical. He needs surgery, and he needs someone watching his vitals who knows what internal bleeding looks like before the monitors catch it. So if you'll excuse me, Colonel, I have work to do." She walked back into the trauma bay. Colonel Hayes watched her go, and her expression was unreadable. Jennifer approached tentatively. "Colonel, what just happened? Who is she?" Hayes looked at the young nurse. "She is someone who has saved more lives in combat zones than most trauma surgeons save in their entire careers. And I intend to find out why she's working in a supply closet." The surgery took 3 hours. Sergeant Major Dalton Reyes came out of it alive. Barely, but alive. The surgeon said it was close, that another 5 minutes would have been too late. The nursing staff whispered about what had happened in the trauma bay, about the quiet paramedic who had saved the Marine, about the colonel who had appeared out of nowhere and backed her up. But in the days that followed, something else happened too. Dr. Webb filed a formal complaint. The document landed on the desk of the hospital's chief medical officer, Dr. Margaret Acaffer, and it painted a very specific picture. According to Webb's report, Paramedic Chen had been insubordinate, had overstepped her authority, had created a dangerous situation by interfering with patient care, and had shown a pattern of erratic behavior that suggested she was unstable and unqualified for her position. The complaint asked for her immediate termination. Maya found out about it on a Tuesday morning when she arrived for her shift and was met by the hospital's HR director, a thin man named Stephen Marsh who smelled of cologne and discomfort. "Paramedic Chen," he said, "Dr. Acaffer would like to see you, now, in her office." Maya nodded. She didn't ask questions. As she walked down the corridor toward the administrative wing, she passed Jennifer in the hallway. The younger nurse looked at her with an expression that was difficult to read. Sympathy, maybe, or something closer to fear. "I heard what happened," Jennifer whispered. "I'm sorry. I don't think it was fair what you did, but I don't think anyone is going to say that out loud." Maya met her eyes. "I didn't do anything to be fair. I did what was necessary. That's different." Jennifer didn't understand. She couldn't have. But she remembered the way Maya had said those words, and something about them lingered. Dr. Acaffer's office was large and impersonal, filled with the kind of motivational art that corporations hang on walls to make people feel like they're part of something important. Acaffer herself was behind her desk, a tall Nigerian-American woman in her late 40s with an expression that suggested she had heard this complaint before and was already tired of it. "Paramedic Chen, sit down." Maya sat. Acaffer slid a folder acros. The desk. "Dr. Webb has filed a formal complaint regarding your conduct during the trauma activation on the night of January 14th. According to his report, you entered a trauma bay uninvited, made unauthorized medical decisions, undermined his authority in front of patients and staff, and created a situation that could have resulted in a malpractice suit. She paused, letting that sink in. Do you have anything to say in response? Maya looked at the folder. She didn't open it. Dr. Webb's report contains several factual inaccuracies, she said. I was invited into the trauma bay by the incoming patient's condition. The patient was a Marine who was brought in by paramedics from a crime scene. The authority figure who validated my assessment was Colonel Patricia Hayes, who was present in the bay throughout the stabilization process. Colonel Hayes has submitted her own report, which I believe is already in your files. Akaffer's eyes flickered slightly. Colonel Hayes submitted a report. Yes, ma'am. She indicated that my actions were consistent with appropriate combat medical protocols and that my assessment of the patient's condition was accurate and timely. She also noted that my intervention was directly responsible for saving the patient's life. There was a long silence. Akaffer pulled the folder back toward her. I see. I'll need to review both reports before making a decision. In the meantime, I'm placing you on administrative leave pending the investigation. You'll be notified when we've completed our review. Maya nodded. She stood up. Dr. Chen, Akaffer said, and Maya stopped. Your personnel file doesn't indicate a medical degree. Where did you learn trauma response protocols? Maya was quiet for a moment. I learned them in places where the difference between right and wrong was measured in minutes and where no one was coming to help. Akaffer stared at her. You can go, she said finally. Maya walked out of the office and down the corridor, past the ER, past the trauma bay, past the supply closet where she had never actually been confused about the location of the towels. She clocked out at the time clock, collected her things from her locker, and walked out through the staff entrance into the cold morning air. She was halfway across the parking lot when she heard the footsteps behind her. Paramedic Chen. She turned. Colonel Hayes was walking toward her, still in uniform, and she was not alone. Behind her came two men in suits, federal agents by the look of them, and behind them a man in Marine Corps dressed blues with a chest full of medals that caught the morning light. Sergeant Major Dalton Reyes was standing 50 feet away, and he was looking at Maya like she was a ghost. I know you, he said. I know who you are. Maya said nothing. Fallujah, he said. He took a step forward, then another, and his eyes were wet. It was you, at the fire base. The night everything went sideways. The night you, and he stopped, and his voice broke. The night you dragged me out of the firefight when I'd already given up, when I'd stopped shooting and I was just waiting to die. And you carried me for a half a mile through a building that was collapsing around us. And you didn't say a word, you just kept moving. And when I woke up in the field hospital, the medics told me there was no way anyone could have gotten me out. No way anyone could have survived that, but you did. You did. Maya closed her eyes. I didn't know it was you, Reyes continued. I didn't recognize your face, but I recognized your hands, the way you work, the way you move. I've been trying to remember for 4 days, and he took another step, and his voice was barely a whisper now. You're the reason I'm alive. You're the reason any of us are alive. The whole company, everyone who made it out of that fire base, everyone who got to come home. It's because of you. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. Paramedic Chen's actual name is Major Maya Chen. She served 3 deployments as a combat medic with the 75th Ranger Regiment. She holds a silver star, 2 bronze stars with Valor devices, and a Purple Heart. She has personally saved over 200 lives in combat zones, including the lives of at least 47 U.S. service members during the Battle of Fallujah alone. She's the most decorated combat medic of her generation. She paused. And she was working in your supply closet because your hospital hired her under false pretenses, assigned her to menial tasks despite her qualifications, and subjected her to systematic discrimination because she wouldn't defend herself. The parking lot was silent. Dr. Webb was standing in the doorway of the hospital, 50 yards away. He had come outside to see what was happening, and now he was frozen, watching, his face pale. Colonel Hayes turned to face him. Dr. Webb, she said, her voice carried across the parking lot. I have a report here from the Department of Defense regarding the medical credentials of Madge. Or Maya Chen. It appears that your hospital received this report when she was hired, but buried it in her personnel file without acting on it. Major Chen holds a physician's assistant certification, advanced trauma life support certification, and combat paramedic credentials that are recognized by every military branch and most major hospital systems in the country. She held up a document. Despite this, she was assigned to transport duties and denied the opportunity to use her training. She was subjected to harassment and ridicule by staff members, including yourself, who referred to her as the quiet one and just a paramedic in front of patients and colleagues. And when she saved the life of a United States Marine using skills you don't possess, you filed a complaint to have her fired. Webb's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sergeant Major Reyes turned to face him. "I almost died in your hospital," he said. His voice was low, controlled, and absolutely lethal. "If Major Chen hadn't been there, if she hadn't done what you were too arrogant to do, I would have died in that trauma bay, and you would have written in your report that you did everything you could. But you didn't do everything you could. You didn't even do anything at all. You stood there and watched her work, and you tried to fire her for saving my life." Webb took a step backward. This is a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," Reyes said. "It's exactly what it looks like. It's a decorated combat medic being pushed around by a bureaucrat with a white coat and a god complex. And I know how that story ends, because I've seen it too many times in uniform. The question is whether your hospital is going to do the right thing or whether this is going to go a lot further than a parking lot conversation." The doors of the hospital opened again. Dr. Margaret Acaffer stepped out, and behind her came the hospital's legal counsel, the head of the nursing board, and a man in an army uniform that bore the insignia of a major general. "Good morning, Colonel Hayes," Acaffer said. Her voice was calm, professional, and there was no sign of the uncertainty she had shown in her office. "I received your report this morning, and I've been making some calls. General Morrison has agreed to participate in this meeting as a witness to the events of January 14th and as a representative of the Armed Forces Medical Examiner System." General Morrison nodded. "I've reviewed the footage from the trauma bay. I was actually in the hospital at the time, visiting another patient, and I observed the events firsthand. Dr. Webb's complaint is not supported by the evidence. In fact, the evidence suggests the opposite, that Paramedic Chen's intervention was the only reason Sergeant Major Reyes survived." He turned to Webb. "I'd like to know, Dr. Webb, why you filed a complaint against a decorated military medic who saved the life of one of our nation's most senior enlisted Marines. I'd especially like to know why you did so, while knowing that there was a colonel from the Army Medical Corps in the room who could testify to everything that happened." Webb's face had gone from pale to gray. I didn't think." "No," General Morrison said, "you didn't, and that appears to be a pattern." Acaffer stepped forward. "Dr. Webb, effective immediately, you are being placed on administrative leave pending a full review of your conduct. Your privileges in the emergency department are suspended. Legal counsel will be in touch regarding potential liability issues related to the false complaint filed against Paramedic Chen." She turned to Maya. "Major Chen, on behalf of Memorial General Hospital, I want to apologize for the way you've been treated. We failed to recognize your qualifications, we failed to provide you with appropriate opportunities, and we failed to support you when you saved a life. That is unacceptable, and it will not happen again." She extended her hand. Maya looked at it for a long moment, then she reached out and shook it. "I don't need an apology," she said. "I need the ability to do my job. I didn't come here to be honored. I came here because I wanted to help people, and I thought that was something this hospital would support. I was wrong about that. But I don't think I'm wrong about the work itself or about what it means. So if you're willing to let me do the job I'm trained to do, then we can move forward." Acaffer nodded. "You have full admitting privileges in the ER, effective immediately. You will be assigned to the trauma team with the authority and compensation appropriate to your qualifications. And Dr. Webb's position will be filled by someone who understands that saving lives is not about status, it's about skill." She glanced at the departing physician. "Take him out of here," she said to the security guards who had appeared. "And make sure he understands that his behavior is going to be documented in a file that will follow him for the rest of his career." Webb was escorted away, and his face as he went was the face of a man who finally understood that some things cannot be taken back. The parking lot began to clear. The agents left first, their presence no longer needed. General Morrison shook Maya's hand and told her that her country owed her a debt it could never fully repay. Colonel Hayes lingered, watching the way Maya stood, the way she held herself, the way she didn't seem to understand that she had just been vindicated. "You could have told them who you were," Hayes said, "the day you were hired. You could have shown them your credentials, demanded your position, made them treat you with respect. Why didn't you?" Maya looked at her. "Because that's not why I came here. I came here because I couldn't sleep anymore, because the nightmares were too loud and I needed to be around people who needed help. Not because they knew who I was, but because they were just people and I knew how to help them. And I thought maybe if I could just be useful, if I could just do the work, that would be enough. That I wouldn't need them to see me. That I could just be invisible and still do some good." Hayes was quiet for a moment. "And were you wrong?" Maya thought about that. "I don't know, maybe I was wrong to think I could be invisible. Maybe people like us can't disappear, no matter how hard we try. Or maybe," she looked at Sergeant Major Reyes, who was still standing there, still watching her with those wet eyes. "Maybe being invisible was never the point. Maybe the point was that someone needed to see us, and the only way that happens is if we let them." Reyes stepped forward. "Major Chen, Maya, I don't know how to say what I need to say. I've been thinking about it for 4 days, and I still don't have the words. So I'm just going to say what I can, and I hope it's enough." He straightened up, and the movement was formal, deliberate, military. "I owe you my life, not in the abstract way that people say it, in the real way. Because I know exactly what happened that night, and I know that if you hadn't been there, if you hadn't done what you did, I would have died in that building, and I would have deserved to because I'd already given up. And you didn't let me give up. You carried me out, and you didn't stop, and you didn't complain, and you didn't ask for anything in return. And I've spent 4 years wondering who you were, and now I know, and I need you to understand that I see you. I see you, and I will never forget what you did, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it." He reached up and unpinned something from his uniform. It was a small bronze star, worn smooth by decades of handling. "This was my grandfather's," he said. "He earned it at Normandy. He told me once that the only medals that mattered were the ones you couldn't see, the ones that were just the choices you made when no one was watching and you could have gone either way. He said the hardest thing in the world was to be brave when nobody was going to know, to be kind when nobody was going to thank you, to do the right thing when the right thing was going to cost you everything and nobody was going to care." He held out the star. "This is yours, it always was. I just didn't know how to give it to you until now." Maya looked at the medal, then she looked at Reyes. "You don't have to do this. I know, that's why I'm doing it. Because you taught me that the only things worth doing are the things nobody makes you do." Maya reached out and took the medal. It was warm from his uniform, warm from his hand, and when she closed her fingers around it, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt seen. In the weeks that followed, Maya Chen became a different person in the hospital. Not because she changed, but because the people around her finally saw what had been there all along. She was promoted to lead trauma paramedic, with full authority to direct emergency interventions and override physician decisions in critical situations. She was given a private office, a dedicated team, and a salary that reflected her actual qualifications rather than the fabricated limitations in her original job description. But the changes weren't just professional. Jennifer Kowalski, the young nurse who had witnessed everything, asked Maya to mentor her. The surgical team sought her out for consultation on complex trauma cases. Even Dr. Ackafer, who had initially treated her with bureaucratic caution, began to include her in policy discussions about emergency protocols. And every morning, when Maya walked into the ER, she paused at the supply closet, just for a moment, and thought about all the days she'd spent searching for something that had always been right there, waiting for her to find it. The story of the quiet paramedic spread through the hospital, and from there, through the broader medical community, and from there, through the networks of veterans and servicemen. Burrs who recognized the signs of someone who had served and suffered and survived. Maya received letters from soldiers she had saved in Fallujah, from families of Marines who had come home because of her, from doctors who had heard about her through channels and wanted to thank her for what she had done. She answered every letter. She kept a file of them in her office, next to her medals and her commendations and the small bronze star that Sergeant Major Reyes had given her. And sometimes, late at night, when the ER was quiet and the fluorescent lights were humming their eternal song, she would take out one of those letters and read it again, and she would think about what it meant to be seen. 6 months later, Memorial General Hospital held its annual awards ceremony. It was a formal event, held in the hospital's conference center, with dinner and speeches and the kind of atmosphere that suggested something important was happening. Maya was asked to attend, though she didn't know why until she arrived and saw the program. She was being honored, not with a simple certificate or a handshake, but with the hospital's highest award for clinical excellence, the director's citation for extraordinary service. The same award that Dr. Webb had received 3 years earlier for his contributions to the hospital's emergency protocols. Colonel Hayes was there, now retired but still sharp-eyed and present. Sergeant Major Reyes was there too, his uniform immaculate, his recovery complete. General Morrison had come, along with representatives from the Army Medical Corps and the Veterans Administration. And in the back of the room, looking small and uncomfortable, was Dr. Harrison Webb, who had been required to attend as part of his ongoing disciplinary review. Dr. Ockefer took the stage. Each year, she said, we honor the members of our staff who demonstrate exceptional commitment to our mission of saving lives. This year, that honor goes to someone who represents everything we claim to value but so rarely live up to. She came to us with extraordinary skills that went unrecognized and underutilized. She was subjected to disrespect and dismissal by colleagues who should have known better. And when the moment came to prove herself, she didn't argue, didn't complain, didn't demand recognition. She simply did what she had always done, saved lives without asking for anything in return. She looked at Maya, who was sitting in the front row. Major Maya Chen served 3 deployments as a combat medic with the United States Army. She earned a Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor devices, and a Purple Heart. She has personally saved the lives of over 200 people in combat zones, including 47 American service members during the Battle of Fallujah. And for the past 6 months, she has brought those same skills to our emergency department, saving lives and teaching others how to save lives, all while carrying the weight of everything she experienced and everything she lost. She held up the citation. Major Chen, please come forward. Maya stood. She walked to the stage and she shook Dr. Ockefer's hand, and she accepted the award, and she did not say much. But when the microphone was handed to her, she spoke anyway. I'm not good at this, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room. I'm not good at being seen or being honored or being told that what I did mattered. For a long time, I thought that was a weakness, that I should be able to stand up and talk about what I'd done and feel proud of it. But I've learned something over the past year. I've learned that the people who need to see you will see you, whether you're standing in the spotlight or hiding in the supply closet. And the ones who don't see you, who can't see you, they're not the ones who matter. They're not the ones who will be there when it counts. She paused. I didn't do any of this to be recognized. I did it because people needed help and I knew how to help them. That was enough. It was always enough. But she looked at Reyes, at Hayes, at all the faces that were watching her. I'm starting to think that maybe it doesn't have to be either way. Maybe it's possible to do the work and be seen for it. Maybe it's possible to be invisible and still matter. Maybe the point isn't to choose one or the other. Maybe the point is to do the work and let the seeing happen, whether you want it to or not. She held up the citation. So thank you for seeing me, for remembering, for telling me that what I did mattered even when I wasn't sure I believed it. And I promise that I will keep doing the work, not for the recognition, not for the awards, but because there are people out there who need help and I know how to give it, and that's enough. That's always been enough. She stepped back from the microphone, and the room applauded. After the ceremony, Maya found herself standing outside in the cool night air, looking up at the star. The parking lot was empty now, most of the guests having left for the evening. But there was someone still there, standing a few feet away, watching her. Colonel Hayes. You did good tonight, she said. Better than you think. Maya shook her head. I didn't do anything different than I've always done. That's the point. You didn't change. You just let them see what was already there. Hayes stepped closer. I have a proposition for you. The Army is starting a new program, combat medics transitioning to civilian emergency medicine with support structures and proper credentialing and mentorship. We need someone to help run it. Someone who understands what it's like to come back from war and try to find a place in a world that doesn't know what you went through. Someone who knows how to be invisible and still matter. She held out a card. I want you to consider it, not for the title or the salary, but because there are going to be people like you, people with skills and experience and hearts full of things they can't talk about, who are going to need someone to show them that it's possible to keep going, that the work is enough, that they matter even when no one is watching. Maya took the card. She looked at it in the dim light. "You really think I can do that?" Hayes smiled, the first time Maya had ever seen her smile. "I think you've already been doing it for years. You just didn't know it had a name." They stood there for a moment, two women who had seen too much and survived anyway, looking up at the stars that had watched them both from distant places. And then Colonel Hayes turned and walked away, and Maya was alone again. But not really alone, not anymore, because she had the card in her hand, and the citation in her bag, and the bronze star in her pocket. And somewhere out there, people who had seen her, people who would remember, people who had carried her with them into their own lives, and held her there like a secret they were proud to keep. She looked back at the hospital. The lights were still on. The work was still happening. Somewhere inside, someone was bleeding, and someone was afraid, and someone was doing everything they could to save a life they had never expected to touch. Maya put the card in her pocket, adjusted her bag, and walked back inside. There was work to do. And that was enough. It had always been enough. And now, finally, someone else knew it too.